to Redefine Parenting. I am your host, Veenu Keller. I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores and iOS Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, I have a very special guest. And my guest today, I've asked her to come on because she specializes in the topics of transitioning, transgender children. And for a lot of us, this is all new. You know, when I was raised back in the 80s and 90s, I was born in the 70s, we didn't hear about people that are transitioning or transgenders. As a matter of fact, we might have looked at people with a stigma, like, you know, who are these people? Why would they do this? What's wrong with them? And it wasn't until recently when I've actually met, you know, in the last, I'd say 15 years, so many beautiful men and women who were not born that way. They weren't born with the natural sex. You know, they were born as with the male sex gender, and they transitioned into a woman. And when I see them, I saw them as this beautiful woman. And there was a lot of information that just gets, you know, misguided, if you would, by what society brings from our past into our future. And the results are, or the facts are actually, that we are in a world that's changing. We cannot wait for the world to adapt to who we were. We need to adapt to the world that we're living in. So my guest today is Dr. Sana, and she's a physician with special interest in gender variance and body diversity. She's a licensed neuroencoder specialist and quad certified master coach. She is going to be the first trans awareness physician in the world, Pakistan. And I'm so excited, Dr. Sana, to have you here to really just have this real and raw conversation and help people bring awareness to this subject. You know, you and I had a conversation that probably could have gone on for hours, and you really brought light to my mind and more information that I could ever have been, you know, privileged to. And that's why I wanted to bring you onto the show, because how do we kill the stigma of what people think transgenders are? How do we get rid of the labels and the titles that make people who feel they need the, you know, they're born into a different body, they want to be a different gender, and how do we accept that? How does society accept that? How do we, you know, get over this stigma?
So these are beautiful questions. And I'd like to say that let's start with awareness. Um, can you hear me
Yeah.
clearly?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So when I say awareness, let's first understand that when a human baby is born, that baby can be born in three ways. So you can have a male body child, and you can have a female body child, and then you can have an intersex body child. Now, these terms, like this term intersex, wasn't used frequently. And like you said, back in the 70s, there were a lot of stigmas attached. These people were there, but they were not identified as such. What we studied in our curriculum, medical curriculum, were disorders and diseases.
Yeah.
So for a very long time, they were taken as something to be fixed, something to be cured. When I started studying about this, and I started connecting with people, what I found out was amazing, that we need to change the lens that we've been seeing with, and we need to see them as variety in humans.
I love that. I love what you just said. Change the lens, because isn't that what we need to do about everything? Like, our whole life, we create these filters. If you would, for our listeners, think of like putting on glasses. When you put on sunglasses, what happens? Your whole view changes. Everything in your visual span changes. It gets tinted with color. And so what I hear you saying, Dr. Sana, is that we need to start kind of putting on the sunglasses. We need to start changing the variance of what we are seeing so we can see it differently.
Yeah.
And that's
So
a beautiful concept.
this for the biology, right? So understand it like this. When I talk about something that's visible, like genitals, body parts, or the hormone levels that can be checked by blood tests, or the genetic makeup, the chromosome analysis. If we can pick something there that is atypical. Now, atypical means it's neither the typical male or the typical female. If it's atypical, then it comes in another bracket. People generally call it abnormal. I request everybody to call it uncommon,
Uh,
because uncommon is not abnormal, it's just less common, right?
right.
So 8 billion of us, 8 billion humans on this planet now, not a single person is same. We have different retinas, we have different fingerprints, you know. This is what makes us different, and our differences, uh, they need to be valued, because we are just that. And the way we exhibit ourselves, the way we behave, that comes, that defines the psychology, right? The uh, like Joseph says, the psychology is what you think about yourself, what you think about others, and what you think about the world. So when I raise awareness about the variety in humans, I say, if I was to tell you, Veenu, there's only red rose, would you believe me?
No,
Why wouldn't you? You've seen other colors, but if I was to say red is the best, kill the others, let the others rot.
no, I wouldn't, because I have my own opinions through my own beliefs.
Yes, and you've seen things, you've heard things, you've felt things. So when it comes down to the basic human rights, every person born has those human rights. They come with them. So it's on us. It's not really an allowance that we have to give. It's just that we need to understand them better.
Right, right. So, you when we were having this conversation,
Mhm.
you really opened my eyes to realize the difference between sex and gender. Because I personally, before, and I just want to put this out to our listeners, we are all ignorant when we have a lack of information. We
Yeah.
all are. And I will be the first one. And my listeners know I get very vulnerable on this because I'm just like everyone else. You're a doctor, you're licensed in this, I'm not. And so I think that what's great about this conversation is I'm talking to a professional who's done the research, who's licensed in this. And here I am, just a parent who's raising children in this new generation. I've raised kids in the millennial generation, and I still am so ignorant up until our conversation about, I just thought gender was the sex we were born. Like if I'm born a female, right? I have the female part
Mm-hmm.
when I was born.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, my hormones have been tested as I've gotten older. I've had, my tests done. So I can tell you that, I am typically, my hormones are very common of a female.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I always felt, gender wise, I am female because that's the sex parts that I was born with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
However, having the conversation with you the other day made me realize that the gender is not the sex. So
Yes,
can
because
you can you help
yeah, yeah.
everybody understand the information that you help me understand?
Okay, so we know, if it, let me say, gender is your innate sense of who you are on the scales of masculinity and femininity. Now, those scales, generally, the society, it scribes that this is masculine or this is feminine, doing certain things, wearing certain things, and living your life, experiencing your life in a certain way. The society decides. So for some, in some cultures, something might be considered masculine, in some cultures it might be considered feminine. So where you belong really matters, because that's how the society will expect you to grow. Now, what had happened was, earlier, because as medicine progressed, as surgeries progressed, and as researches started to happen, generally in the 1950s and 1970s, it was decided that an average human man would be 70 kilos. So the medication would be prescribed according to that body weight. And because of this, when gender equity boomed up, and the talk started going, people started saying women will suffer because the standard is that there for a man. Now I'm at a point, now it's 2023, I'm at a point where I now offer gender affirming care to 18 plus individuals, where I actually look into what their blood levels are, how they are behaving, how they're experiencing life, and if they're having challenges with it. When you say you're born in a wrong body, some people will say that, not all, because gender is a spectrum. For example, if there was a scale of 1 to 10, a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 would be really feminine and 10 would be like very masculine, GI Joe kind of person. So in your own experience of life, do you think you're really, really feminine, like a Barbie?
No,
I,
no, I would, and what was great is that you actually had the scale that I looked at, and it went from pink to black, right? Like
yeah,
black is like macho, masculine, everything.
yeah,
And then like as the colors went from pink, into more of a purple, blue, and then green, brown, black,
yeah,
I
yeah,
realized that I'm probably like more of a 5 in that,
mhm,
where I have my femininity. And
yeah,
more so in the last 10 years, I've been able to tap into my feminine essence more at my core.
mhm,
And because circumstances had shaped me to be more masculine. So if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have been more of a blue than I was a
mm,
peach purple. And so now I'm that pinkish purple, right? So that feminine side of me. And then there's
mhm.
times that the masculine comes out. Like if someone's coming after my child, I go masculine, I go protector. I'm gonna, you know, be in that
Yes,
masculine. My husband
exactly.
is not that black person. He's more of the greenish brown, where he's very
Mm,
masculine in his essence. It's what I was
mm,
attracted to, that masculine man. But he's also he has that vulnerable sensitivity side too, where he could do that
mm.
nurturing, and that feminine does come out. And that's what was so beautiful, is realizing there's such a spectrum. It's not black and white. You're not feminine and you're not masculine. It's where you
Exactly.
fall into that.
So we do experience these, but then there's a ratio to it, like a seesaw. Okay, so wherever your seesaw tilts towards, you have more of that, and you kind of identify with that. Now, some people may not be able to identify it tilting towards a particular side. So if they're smack in the middle, they may say we're androgynous or non-binary, where we don't subscribe to either of the gender. So it's not either or, it's not a box, M or F. It's more of a spectrum. And we need to understand that, and we need to let people experience life the way they're supposed to. What we've done in the past is that we've imposed things. This
Mm,
has to be like this. This has to be, girls sit like this, boys do that.
yeah.
And we know, if you remember, I also mentioned that before the early 1900s, pink was not the color for girls, blue was not the color for boys. So we got this color coding very recently. And now, as there's more research is happening. WHO, the World Health Organization, and the United Nations, they're also coming up with certain statements and certain conclusions for us to actually look into. I've recently become a member of the World Organization for Transgender Health, and they have a standard of care that needs to be followed by certain physicians, and or the first point of contact. So what happens is, let me share a little story also. So it's assumed that very educated people would know the difference between sex and gender, but in my practice it hasn't been so. I got a client, 20-year-old, um, identifying as a man, young man, working a menial job. Like, he was working as a peon at a bank, and he had come in because he had heard that a doctor sits who um, who's non-judgmental, and who would go into the depths of who they really are. I don't know what clicked, but he came in with his mom. Now both of them were illiterate. They weren't even able to write their names in English.
Mm,
Okay, so so in the first go, I had to explain everything into their native language, and then ask the boy his experience, what he was going through. His issue was that he had certain breast growth, and he identified as a man, and because of that breast growth, he was really uncomfortable cleaning tables because, he had to bend over
mm,
and people would notice him. And it was becoming embarrassing for him. And when I inquired, I sent him to get a test done. Now, in Pakistan, healthcare is really expensive if you go for private tests, and genetic testing is really expensive. So I sent him for just one test, and he got back to me after a month. And in that test, it was evident that he had a genetic variation. I don't call it a disorder, but it is known by doctors as DSDs, disorders of sexual development. It's called Klinefelter syndrome, where the child is born with an extra X. So with the X and Y, there is an extra X. Because of the extra X, the breast development happens. Now,
mm,
this explaining this to him and then telling his mom what all are the consequences of having an extra X and how his life will turn out to be. The entire conversation that day and in the follow up, I kid you not, they were not educated, they were not literate, but they seemed educated because they were adapting to whatever I was telling them. They were willing to go with what I told them. And I told them nothing was needed immediately. He needs to understand what's going on first, how his life is going to turn out. The mother's concern was whether he will be able to get married or not. And so I, counseled them. Why I'm bringing this up is because I have come across many well educated parents who are not letting their children transition.
mm. So I have a
Not
question.
because they want to, yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
Let me ask a couple questions here, just so
Okay.
we can keep everybody, understanding. Because I mean, I have so many questions. It's so when this gentleman came to you, did he feel that extra X chromosome? Because obviously there was like a hormone that extra X gave him to create the breasts, right? A female body part.
Hmm. Hmm.
So did he feel more feminine or did he still feel masculine? Did he still feel like identifying as a male?
So his behavior had a little bit of femininity, like he would move his arms a certain way and talk a certain way, but he identified as a man. Now, as a doctor, I can only ask and confirm. I'm not someone who's going to say that no, this is not valid. I can affirm with certain tests what's going on, but this is an intersex body we're talking about. There are other cases we know where you will have a typical genetic makeup, like an XY for a boy and XX for a girl. That's the average we are taught. So you will have that. But the experience gender would not align with the body parts.
Right.
Now, my question to you would be, have you heard about women with uterine cancers and ovarian cancers undergoing surgeries for
A lot.
those, the
A lot.
removal of
I
those?
think more now in the 2000s, right? Like especially
Hmm.
the last 10 years, we're hearing more. And actually, medical has changed for us. They used to say that, when we get to a certain age, we only need, a pap smear every other year. And it's changing now. Now we have to have more pap smears done
Yeah.
at an older age where we never used to. So it already is showing you that medical
Hmm.
studies are changing and the awareness of our bodies need
Hmm.
has now come to fruition that we need to come to the doctor more often. We have to have that pap smear more often.
Hmm.
And I was
So,
shocked at my physical when the doctor's like, "Oh, well, you're due for this." And I'm like, "Well, no, because I had it such and such year." He's like, "No, no, no, no. Science has changed and
yeah.
now it's a requirement." I was like, "Who knew?"
Hmm. So, my question was, women who undergo such surgeries and they remove the body parts that are the female body parts, does the behavior change? Do they become masculine? Do they say their identity has changed?
You know, the ones that I have heard that have had a hysterectomy, like a full
Hmm.
hysterectomy and stuff, they still feel feminine. They still feel they're a woman. Some of
Yeah.
them are that had been moms already.
Hmm.
So, they they felt like something was missing. They do feel
Hmm.
like a part of their identity is gone.
Hmm.
Right? That other
Hmm.
women that didn't feel anything. It's like, well, it's like if I had to lose a kidney, I can still survive with one kidney. So it's just, there's just different mindsets, I guess, about it.
So, the point that I want to make is that losing that body part did not change their gender identity.
Right.
So, the body part does not dictate your gender identity. That is, however, part of your biological sex. That's what you're born with. But if for some reason it's taken out, right, it does not change your gender identity. So, sex might be between the legs, but the gender is between your ears.
The
Does
mind.
that make more sense?
Yes, and that's exactly, the diagram that you had showed me last week when we were discussing this. It's like, and you had that body, and then you
Yeah.
had the sex was pointed between the legs,
Hmm.
and the gender was in the mind,
Hmm.
and that's why I was so fascinated with this because I was able to have this conversation yesterday with a client of mine, and she's like, "This is so fascinating. Like the way this woman is explaining it is
Hmm.
amazing." And I was like, "I know," and it opened me up to, why do we judge? Like, I just want to change the whole subject. Why do we judge? We judge what we don't know. We judge what we find is what we used to call abnormal, but I like the word uncommon because there is no normal. Who sets what normal is? Who says what normal is? There is
So,
no
so normal is what generally people take as normal is the average,
right,
right?
right.
So let me also throw in a figure, okay? So the global figure for intersex people is 2%. That means out of 100, there'll be two people born intersex. Unfortunately, many countries don't give a birth certificate for an intersex person. They
Interesting.
would try and fix them into the binary boxes that we already know of. So they will, obviously the child will need a gender to be raised, there are probabilities. The doctors, a multidisciplinary team can tell you how to raise the child, what gender neutral terms to use, how to even name the child, how to disclose to the family. But this requires a lot of counseling and a lot of training on the doctor's parts, right? My In 2021, I did a small study here locally. It was a knowledge gap study of the healthcare providers, and the conclusion was that they wanted to know more about transgender health. They wanted to know where the intersex and transgender umbrellas are overlapping,
Mm,
and and how in a Muslim country like Pakistan in 2018 the law changed, and it was amended that the transgender citizens will be identified and recognized as citizens of Pakistan. This was a huge step because it involved self identification. So the perceived gender will weigh more.
mm,
You do not, in US, you still require a note from the psychologist, a note from the psychiatrist, or the attending physician. Whereas in our case now, the affirming care that I give, if the person is 18 plus, I would order certain blood works, imaging if needed, and genetic tests if needed. And even then, I will ask them about their experienced gender, and then give them the gender affirming care accordingly. There is no nullifying or invalidating. See, what you asked why we judge, it's because something that we're not aware of gives
correct.
us anxiety,
Correct.
something, fear of the unknown.
Correct.
It's such a common thing, and we do it with everybody we know. It's not just these gender variant people. We do it with everybody. Don't we have cases of body shaming? Don't we
Yeah.
have cases of color and racism?
Right.
We it comes down to that. And it's just that your acceptance is a process. The parents who do have transitioning children may need to up their game, become more knowledgeable. read the right stuff. Ever since I read Heather Valoria's book, The Spectrum of Sex, it was an eye opener for me. And I would really want people to, read it. It's available in the US. I had to order it from abroad because it's not available in Pakistan.
So there's
But,
a, so
yeah.
there's a couple things like, and I'm going to touch on this because it had been brought up in another show. And so for my listeners, I'm just going to let you know I'm not a doctor. Dr. Sana is. And so this is why it's a great opportunity to bring this up. Giving children medication to change their body
Hmm.
before, right in the middle of puberty, right? So about right when we get to 10, our body starts changing.
Yeah.
Some more rapidly than others, but we all know, like at 10 years old, the brain's changing, our chemicals in our body's changing, whether you can see it or not. Like some of us are late bloomers.
Yeah.
If you look at my daughter compared to other kids her age, my daughter has a very immature body, but yet
Hmm.
I know things in her body are changing. I know hormones are already starting to change. And so, with that, here's my opinion. And I'm going to caveat this is definitely my opinion, based on nothing but my opinion. I feel that
Hmm.
allowing your child to transition their body the way
Hmm.
it was intended by the universe, God, whatever you believe in, and then allowing them at 18. So if my daughter tells me today, Mom, I really feel like
Hmm.
I'm a boy, I want to change my name. I want to wear boy clothes. I really want you to see me as a boy. Here's
Hmm.
what I would do. I would definitely see her, now him, as a boy.
Hmm.
I would let him
Hmm.
pick his name. I would let
Hmm.
him pick his clothes. And I would
Hmm.
help him to feel what it feels like in that new identity.
Hmm.
And then when he turned 18, we would have that discussion. How do you feel? Like,
Hmm.
if this is what you really want, how can I support you? And if he says, Mom, I'm ready to see the doctor. I want to go on hormones. I
Hmm.
want my female hormones that I was born with to be suppressed. And I want more testosterone. I want to be able to have a deeper voice. I want to be able to, my body to form as a boy. So I need the chemical things. I would support him 100%. Absolutely. It's his choice. I wish that he would wait till he was 25, 28, till his brain was fully developed.
Yeah.
However, at 18, it's his choice. And I would love him as my son now. And I would see him and I would allow it to happen with my full love and support. That doesn't mean I'm not loving, supporting him before 18. It's just, I would not, as a parent, I'm here to
Mm.
guide him. I'm here to make the best decision I possibly can. And I'm not here to shame the parents that have made that decision to let their
Yeah.
kids. If you've
Yeah.
made that decision and that's how you feel you could support your child, I support you. I'm so happy you made that decision. I'm purely speaking from my unmedical opinion about
Yeah.
being, I have 6 kids. So I'm talking
Hmm.
about literally how would I deal with that? That's how I would deal with it. So as a doctor,
Hmm.
tell me your opinion about what I said. Am I wrong? Am I right? Is everyone right about the choices they
The
make?
minute we knew, the minute you said, I will support my child, I truly appreciate you for saying that, because that is what is needed. It's needed that you understand them. Medicalized information can be given if your healthcare system provides certain medicalized information that doesn't sit fine with you. The ultimate consent is the child's, and they need to be mature enough to understand the consequences of giving that consent. My dilemma comes when I entertain people or parents to infants. And since an infant cannot give consent, under 2 years of age, if a surgery is going to happen, that surgery being a cosmetic surgery, then I I would probably want to delay that, because we don't know yet what the gender of the child is, because the gender they can speak. Something that I can help you with right now is that when a child expresses themselves of another gender, the gender that is not aligning with the sex assigned at birth, then what you can do is, or anyone who's listening and is lost, doesn't know how to go about it, what you can do is have them looked up by a psychologist who can just gauge their femininity and masculinity, and let them, yes, let the biology take its role. Do allow them to explore, and without any irreversible changes. And when I say irreversible, I mean surgery is irreversible in many instances. Certain hormone levels and hormone therapy, certain procedures are irreversible. I am still opposed to those irreversible ones, because then, you can't reverse. But let them have this experience. Okay, what would this feel like? Is this you? Can you relate with this? Because yes, puberty, in there's an influx of chemicals in your brain, in your body. If the body accepts those chemicals, it will change in a different way. That change may or may not sit fine with you as a person who's evolving. Now, as a parent, for that person, you can just support, provide information, take them to a healthcare provider who understands what's going on. Because if you take them to someone who doesn't, who's not trained, they will end up inducing stigma or doing some kind of medical harm. And that medical harm has been happening. There are children under 2 years of age who are being operated upon. There are certain conditions that are common in my you
Region.
know region. Yeah, they may not be as common in your region, but then again, there's not enough research to support. We know, when I was thinking what I should put forth, something to look at is success stories. Make it Success stories make it to the front. So the failures, the surgeries that had consequences, grave consequences, who hears about those?
Right.
They don't even show up for follow-ups. How do you track them? How do you help them? Because they're miserable. There are a lot of consequences to every procedure done. Now, if somebody says, a urologist once said to me, 95% cases were successful, and I was like, what of those 5%, sir? What about the 5% that are going to suffer? So are we going to let them be? Are they doomed to have, lifelong healthcare issues, and then psychological issues? Because then it will become a psychosocial trauma. So, you know, having these really deep, meaningful conversations with all the healthcare providers involved is very essential. It's more essential for the parents to come on board, for the parents to understand that if you have a gender diverse or a gender variant child who's showing signs of gender incongruence, that's a word I'm using because it is used by WHO, and gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria, you can gauge, okay? It's the incongruence between the sex that was assigned at birth because of the body parts and the gender experienced by the child verbalized once they were able to speak and
Okay.
or communicate.
This is amazing. This is so amazing. Okay. So here's what is interesting. So I coach a lot of teenagers. Most of my coaching practice is teenagers or parents. And some of the teenagers over the years have identified, they changed their pronouns, right? So
Okay.
the pronouns changes have become prevalent, I would say, in the last, for me anyway, hearing it with my coaching clients, probably in the last 6 years. In the last six
Yeah.
years, more so maybe in the last 3 years, it's really become, oh, I'm he, they, them, they. And it's been very interesting for my mind to shift that because I'm already not great in grammar. So now I'm like, okay, how do I say they, them when it's like not plural? Anyhow, so
Yeah.
what I tell, and the parents get really confused, right? So I'm coaching the parents and I'm allowing the parents to understand. Ask your kids how they want you to support them.
Exactly.
That's it. And I will tell you, some of these kids that I've coached, a handful of them have identified their born sex is female, but now
Mm-hmm.
they're identifying as he, they,
Mm-hmm.
they or they're identifying I'm a lesbian or I'm
Mm-hmm.
bisexual. So now we're going into something different. Now it's not even about their own sex, it's about what they're attracted to, right? Sexually.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what I tell the parents is support them where they're at and let them
Mm-hmm.
guide you where they're going to be so you can continue to support them. I've
Mm-hmm.
had several clients that within 2 years will change back to she, her, will change back to being attracted to boys only. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because the phenomena I'm seeing here is that everyone wants to feel connected. They want to
Yes.
feel they're seen and heard. They want to feel
Yes.
they have an identity. So
Mm-hmm.
these kids that I have coached, they have a common denominator. They feel lonely. The
Yeah.
friends they start to hang out with are also saying they're trans or they're non-binary. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, these kids feel, wow, these people are my people. So are they their people because it's something that they felt, like you said, that gender inside their mind, and they've never been able to express it. All of a sudden they feel the circle, like, wow, you know what I'm feeling, you are my people, because I do believe that happens.
Mm-hmm.
However, people come into these circles because they're like, oh my gosh, you're different, I'm different. I don't really believe what you're saying, but I can understand it because we're all different. And wow, you accept me for who I am. And so they go through this period of time and then they realize, hanging out with that group for 6 months, a year, whatever, wait a second, we're not like minded. Like, I'm not wanting
Mm-hmm.
to change my sex. Like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
second, I'm not a he, they. It was great for a moment. I got my mom or I got my dad on board and they supported me. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm she again. And now I like boys. And what I tell the parents is, you know what's great? Support them where they're at, because you know what you taught them?
Yeah.
Here's the gift you taught them. No matter who they think they are in that moment, you love them. Your love is
Yes.
unconditional. And no matter what they choose in their life, you will support them the best that you know how, because you
Mm.
love them and you want to give them an opportunity to explore their identity so they know that there's not this, I have to make you proud of me or you
Yeah.
won't love me. Because a lot of kids feel that way. A lot of typical, kids, a lot of common kids feel,
Mm-hmm.
I can't disappoint you because if I disappoint you, then you won't love me. So
Yes.
I
So
feel
it's
like
got to do with love and connection.
it does.
That's the human need. A child cannot thrive without love and connection. So that's very right, we know. And I also want to point out, when you said that they have these groups, what happens is, most of the time in the medical literature, in our curriculum, we are given, how common or uncommon the condition is. So for example, 1 in 3,000 babies would be this, 1 in 25,000 babies would be this. That's how sometimes the doctors can also convey to the parents how rare something is. And because it's rare, the child is told that, oh, there's no one like you. It's kind of giving them a feeling that they might be a freak, which really pulls their energy low. It pulls down their self-esteem, self-worth goes down the drain. And then the parents also, they freak out by hearing just like, oh, we have something like
Mhm.
a problem. It's a
Right.
big problem. And then when you attach a medicalized name to it, like something like a big syndrome kind of, then hearing the word syndrome, words have an impact on us. They make us feel a certain way, right?
Correct.
So just hearing that, it messes things up. So instead of looking at what can be done, they start looking to fix the problem. They will want to go to people. Oh, I heard he got, they got their child fixed by such and such professional, whoever the professional is. I'm not saying they're doing something wrong. I'm just saying the option should be there, that the child needs support, and that support is given first by the parents, because family rejection again causes a lot of isolation and psychological issues, mental health problems. The mental health problem is not because of their condition, it's because they never got the support and love.
Right.
They go into drug abuse, alcohol abuse. As they grow, they're lonelier. And
Right.
if they do find someone similar, a minority, then they will start hanging around and they'll be like, oh, you're a freak, I'm a freak, let's let's go together, you know.
Right.
We evolve, we're always changing. And because we're always changing, yes, there can be certain changes that we're not comfortable with, and later we decide to revert. So irreversible changes will never help. Reversible changes, reversible medicalized help can be given, where they can explore in a certain boundary where they're safe.
Right.
I say that whatever you do to them as a healthcare provider or as a parent, even because, you know, we know I have people reaching out to me, inboxing me on social media, saying that they cannot, you know, they're closeted, they cannot tell their parents because the parents will throw a shit fit, their parents will disown them, they will have nowhere to go. So they're closeted, they do want help, but then I can't really take them or you know, take them in as a client unless if they're under 18, they need to be accompanied by the parent, you know, the guardian needs to be there. Or or because in Pakistan we have transgender community kids who do leave their homes out of devastation, out of no, you know, rejection, they end up with the community, and then the community supports them. They have their own culture, they have their own rituals, and they because in Pakistan they get their rights now. It's the law is still being implemented, so there's a lot of awareness raising campaigns going on. And with DEI and B, like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging coming into the picture, now there's job openings as well. So a lot of sensitization needs to be done. And
Yeah.
with your program, we know this show, I'm so glad that you've stepped up and, you know, you're taking this to the masses.
Well, and you know, and this leads me to my next topic of this, because this is why it's redefine parenting. If we don't redefine the way that we're parenting, then we are going to create even a bigger gap with our kids. I get inboxes all the time from my clients going, "Oh, my friend needs to talk to you. I told her how much you helped me. She just really needs it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so sorry. Could you just do one session with her?" And I said, "You know, I can if a parent consents. Like, I'm so
Yes.
sorry, but I just need a text message. I need something from that parent saying, I
Hmm.
know that you are a coach. I know you're not licensed. And I know that my daughter or my son are going to talk to you." And it's sad, but that's true. I mean, because we have legalities, like we
Yeah.
have to make sure that we are not crossing the ethical boundaries. And as much as you and I want to help everyone, unfortunately,
Hmm.
if you're under 18, we need that consent. But I'm going to tell
Yes.
you, the reason why I brought you on this show is because for those that feel they want to transition, they want to be
Hmm.
a parent, they want to be able to, you know, the gender that they feel in their body is different from the sex that they were born with. That giving
Hmm.
them permission that you're not different. Like, there's people out there and there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, I'm going to be bringing on another guest who's actually gone through the journey. She's an amazing woman, an amazing mom. And, you know, she's going to be a guest on my show soon. And so, just to show people that there is light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm going to tell you, there's another reason why is that out of my 6 kids, all of them at this point seem to be the same gender as they were born with. And
Hmm.
I still need to educate myself so I can educate them, so I can educate my kids of being open to seeing the uncommon. And so the uncommon starts to become common, that
Yeah.
they're not judging people, that they can't judge if they're educated, they can't judge if they're aware. And they understand that just because this person is this way doesn't mean they can't be your friend, doesn't mean they can't have a sleepover with you, doesn't mean that they're any different from anybody else. All
Hmm.
it means is that there is a different part of their body that just didn't align, and now they're trying to figure that out. And so if you're their
Yeah.
friend, how can you support them in that, right? And
Yeah.
that is what I need, because like you said, it's 2%, right? So the other 98 families out there need to understand how we can help our kids be more open, so they're not
Yeah.
ostracizing these children, because these children already feel alone, right? If you're
Yeah.
2%, you're already starting to feel like, I'm different. I don't
Hmm.
belong. what's my identity? So
Mm-hmm.
if they can have friends that say, look, it doesn't matter. Whoever you choose to be today and whoever you choose to be tomorrow, you are still my friend. I still want to play with you. I still want to play sports with you. I still accept you. That will help. And I want you just really quickly to share the story of what happened to that person who did that study. You talked to me about the person who took the twins and they did that study. Would you mind sharing about it? Because
Yes.
it was not
You
a great
can.
result. It wasn't a great
Okay.
result. And I want parents to realize when they're
Mm-hmm.
forced or we're forcing what can happen.
So I shared the story of Mr. John Money with you. This is a name you can Google. He's been he used to practice in 1950s, and the case was very famous in the U.S. It was called David Brenda case, where this child, a male child, AMAB, assigned male at birth. AMAP child was born, and upon circumcision, his penis was chopped off. And Mr. John Money had suggested that we can raise that child as a girl, we can do surgery on the genitals, and that this was done. And then David was converted to Brenda, and for a very long time Brenda was put through conversion therapy, all sorts of different experimentation that was done under care of Mr. John Money. Now, while these experimentations were happening, Mr. John Money was going on and on about how successful this case was turning out to be, and because of that, certain papers were written and certain protocols were set for normalizing surgeries. This word is again very common in the intersex community. They say stop IGM, stop intersex genital mutilation. Now, why I bring that up is because when Brenda turned 18, she could not understand why she had scars, or she didn't have sensation in where the scars were, and certain um, body parts were not there. She felt like a man, even though she was being groomed like a girl. She did feel like a man. She was born a male child. Okay, so despite the medicalized information, despite the hormones that were given, despite the surgeries that were done, her brain just could not accept the gender they were trying to give her. So, forcefully, whatever was being done, Brenda later, upon turning 18, got her medical records, converted, changed back to David, and then David later, did not have a very good life and ended up in suicide. Why I mentioned this case was because sometimes doctors mean to do good, but they end up doing harm. I'm a doctor myself. I've gone through a lot of researches just to get myself, up to this understanding how much information needs to be given and what consequences it will have. What's required is the change of lens. Use tolerance, please. Let them express themselves. Give them the opportunity to come to you, and try and understand them in value diversity.
Yes. Dr. Sonnet, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this story. And, as parents, we're doing the best that we can with what we know. The more knowledge we know, the more we can do better for our children. We're here to guide them. And that is why my program is called Redefine Parenting. It's redefining the way that we were parented and how we want to parent our children for the future. So, Dr. Sana, thank you so much again for all your knowledge, for all that you're bringing to the world, to your country, and to the people. I just appreciate you for sharing your vulnerability, your knowledge on this subject so parents can be more aware. Because, again, if we know better, we can do better. If you're finding value in the conversation here on our show, please join our Redefine Parenting group on Facebook for even more tips and conversation. Do someone you know a favor and share my group with them as well so they too can hear what they need to in order for them to feel supported in their parenting journey. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, and download it.